Hello guys, welcome to the 5th lesson of CSS Crash Course, and in this video we're going to be looking at the different types of CSS borders and different backgrounds. Just quickly before we get started guys, if you are interested in learning about web development, please consider subscribing to the CodeLab channel, as I do post weekly content on many different aspects of web development so we can get you closer to building your dream projects. Now with that out of the way we're going to structure this video is I'm going to split it into two sections. So first we're going to speak about borders and then we're going to speak about backgrounds. So as you can see here, we're inside our CSS reference box and I've created another file called 04 borders _ backgrounds.html, and then I've just created a document here with a title of CSS background and borders, and then inside the body I've just got a heading with the inline style of text align center with the content of borders, just to make this a bit more neater and structured. So we're going to open this up with live server now so we can see what we're doing. Now I'm going to go underneath this and let's talk about borders. Now one of the main benefits of using borders is that it enables you to separate parts of the website that you might be designing. So for example, if you're posting articles, you might want to add a text box to make certain portions of the information stand out, as well as helping you place information on your website. Now another underrated aspect of using borders is that they can help you with seeing the structure of your website as you're designing it. So if using things like flexbox or the grid, using borders can really help you with things like child elements. So essentially seeing it as like a tool. Now the way we build borders is going to be using three properties. So I'm going to first create a div and call it complete border because we want the border to be all the way around the content. Now this isn't a particularly good name, but for the purpose of this video I'm going to be calling it complete border. Now the style I'm going to be using for this section is going to be an embedded style sheet or an internal style sheet. So it's inside the head tag and then you just use style tags. And then to give this div a border, we just need to grab the class. So we've called this complete border. So the way we grab a class attribute is full stop or a period, followed by the name. So in this case, complete border. Curly braces for the declaration. So to create a border, we need a few properties. So the first one is going to be the thickness of the border. So this is just border width. And let's just make this 3 pixels. Now nothing will happen at the moment because we need to define the other property, and that's the style. So we've got border style. Now you can see in Emmet we've got loads of different types of styling, but the most common one you'll see is solid. And you can see here now we've created a complete border around our div. Now we can change the color of this using border color, and let's just say this one's red. And you can see now in the browser that our border is 3 pixels thick, solid, and the color red. Now let's just change the styling just to see the different types of styles we've got. So we can have dotted. You can see now that our border is dotted. Then we've also got dashed. You can see now that our border is dashed, but again the most common one you'll see is solid. Now what I'm going to do is just add a bit of padding in here too, just to make it a bit neater. And you can already start to see the benefit of using borders. It just looks a lot nicer and much more neater. Now like with many CSS properties, there's a shorthand for these 3 properties. So you might have seen me use this in a previous video. Go underneath here and it's literally just the word border, and now we put the 3 values in here. Now the order of these 3 values isn't necessarily important, but I like to put it in this order, so I usually put the thickness first, so again 3 pixels, and then the style, so solid, and then the color. And then if I just comment these out, you can see in the browser we have the exact same outcome. Now as I mentioned, the reason I gave this div the class of complete border is because if we use the border property, it puts a border around the whole div, but we can actually apply a border on just one side. So to demonstrate what I mean, I'm going to create a few more borders underneath here. So we're just going to give this a class of border top, and then I'm just going to create 3 more, and call this one bottom, call this one left, right, and just put some content inside here. Now we'll go into the side style sheet again and we'll grab these. So the first one is border top, curly braces. Now the value we use is quite literally border top, so border top, and then you apply the 3 values. So we want this to be 3 pixels, solid, and say green. And what we're going to do is just add some margin at the top of this so it separates it from the other div, say 10 pixels. And you can see now the first div in the browser just has a border at the top. Now we can do the exact same thing but for the bottom, so I'm just going to duplicate this one and change the name to border because it's got a different class of bottom, and then also change bottom for here. So the property is border bottom, and I'm just going to change the color too, so let's say blue. And you can see now that our second div has a border just at the bottom. And again guys, the same rules apply for the left and right, so I'm just going to duplicate this twice. And you can see now that our third div just has a border on the left, and then our final div just has a border on the right. And we can actually combine the two, guys, so you can have a border on the top and bottom but not on the left and right. So let's just go into border top here and put in border bottom and say 3 pixels solid green. And you can see now that our first div has a border at the top and the bottom, and the same rules would apply here for the left and right. So you can give classes borders just on specific places you'd like them to be on. Now, one other property we can use for border is border radius. So if you look at our first div here, it's quite square and quite direct, but we can make this more friendly and more modern looking using the border radius property. So I'm just going to go inside the first div here, so it's complete border, or the class of complete border, and say border radius. And you can put any sort of unit measurement in here, but we're just going to use pixels, so say 10 pixels. And then if you look in the browser, you can see now that all the corners are now much more rounded and just has a much more friendlier, modern look to it. And that's essentially how we implement borders in our projects, guys. We use the shorthand of border here, and then we have the 3 values to style it with, and then we also have the option of just implementing a border on one side or multiple different sides using border top, bottom, left or right. And then we can use the border radius property to give our border edges a more rounded shape to give them a more friendly and modern feel to them. So now let's talk about the background property, guys. So what I'm going to do first is just delete these 4 divs here and also delete the styling, and then I'm just going to duplicate this div here. So we're going to have 2 divs. The first div is going to be for background color and the second div is going to be for background image, and I'm also going to change this and then give this a different class name. So the second div is going to have a BG image. Now you may have seen me use this property in other videos. Now we can change the background color for this div here, or any element for that matter, but for this example we're just going to change the background color of this div. So the way we do that is using the background color property. So I'm going to go underneath border radius here and say background color. Now with regards to colors, there are different methods of using colors. So you've got things like RGBA or hex, but that's going to require a whole video of its own, and in this example we're just going to be using the literal word of color. So the color we're going to use for this example is going to be dark red. Now what you already may notice is that the text is already harder to read, so a good tip is using a background color and a text color that makes the text easy to read. So just say we wanted to keep this dark red background color, we're going to have to compromise and change the text to the color. So the way we do that is using the color property, and we're going to say in this case white, and this makes the text much easier to read, and we've managed to keep the background color of red like we wanted. So you can see how easy it is to implement a background color to your elements and also change the color of the text. Just keep in mind, guys, that you should make sure to use a background color and text color that makes your text easy to read. Now background colors are great and are a really good way of bringing your projects to life, but what's also cool about the background property is that you can give an element an image as a background, and this is particularly useful in things like showcase areas, and a lot of modern day websites have large scale images as background, so it's really useful to learn the background image property. So what we're going to do is grab this second div here with a class of BG image. So we'll go underneath the complete border property and say BG image, so we use a period followed by the name. So now we've selected that class and the declaration. Now if I open up the folder here, you can see I've created an image folder for our CSS reference box, and inside this image folder we have an image, so we need to target this. And this is just one way we can get images inside our projects. So the way we target this image is using the background image property, hit enter, just going to close that off. And then to grab that image we need to grab its location, so we use the URL value, and then inside the brackets we use single quote marks. And if we open up the folder again, you can see we're inside this HTML document, so we need to go outside this. So the way we go outside this is using the full stop / So now we're outside the document and inside the folder as a whole. So we go to where the image folder is, hit enter, and you can see the image inside there, so you hit enter again. I'm just going to close this off, and then if you look in the browser you can see now that our div has the background image implemented. Now you can't see the whole image at the moment because the picture is at fixed width and our div is only taking up the space needed, which at the moment is just the heading here and the paragraph tag. So what I'm going to do is just add a bit of height to this, so to this div, so I'm just going to make it 500 pixels. And that's helped out a little bit. We can see more of the image, but again we still can't see the whole image, so we're going to need a few more properties so we can see the rest of the image. So the first property to remember here is not particularly relevant in this case, but if the image was too small it would repeat itself to fill up the available space. So the way we'd cancel this out is using the background repeat, no repeat. Nothing will change at the moment because the image is too big anyway, so but in cases where the image was too small it would just repeat itself, so you need to put this property in. Now we still can't see the whole image, so in most cases you would like to see the whole image, so the next property you're going to be using is the background size, Now, and the value we put in here is cover. And then if you look in the browser here, you can see now the image takes up the whole div, which is what we want. Now, what we can also do is affect this horizontally and vertically using the X and Y axes. So the way we do that is using background position. So the first value here is the X axis. So we can put in here 200 pixels and it will move 200 pixels to the right. Now the second value is the Y axis. So let's push it 200 pixels down. Now we can also do this with negative numbers. So if we put in here minus and minus, you can see here now that our image is negative 200 pixels to the left and negative 200 pixels up, but you wouldn't really want this outcome, and to be honest I never really used pixels or numbers in this case. Now you'd want this to be in the center, so the values you'd usually see in here is just center on the X and center on the Y, and then it just goes back to the original position we want it. Now again guys, like many CSS properties, we have a shorthand for all these 4 properties here, and that's just background. So what I'm going to do is just type in here background. Now the first value we put in here is grabbing the image, so we use URL and then single quote marks outside the index file, inside the image file, and then enter to grab the image. Now we stay inside the background property but go outside the brackets, and first we put no repeat if your image was too small. Now the third value is the background position, so the X and Y axes, so you want this in the center and the center. Last value here is the background size, so you put in here cover, and then if I comment these out, you can see we get the exact same outcome. Now what we can do from here is change the color of our text, so we'll say color white and text align center. And if you're familiar with Flexbox, we can center this directly in the middle, so we'll just say display flex, flex direction column, and then justify content center align item center. And you can see how nice you can make elements look using the background property. But that'll be it for